Ladies and gents, as I've been introduced, I'm Colleen and I would like to welcome you to the Resilience Masterclass. You've been sat here all day. Finally, it's here, the Resilience Masterclass. By the end of this talk, you will be able to smash through life and bounce back like a superhero. You'll be able to tackle your goals like a ninja. And you will be able to achieve your heart's desires easily and smoothly without any pain whatsoever. Let me see a show of hands for who could do this magic formula. Okay, cool. I'm really sorry, but I think you might have come to the wrong talk. Because whilst I do have a formula and a methodology to share with you later on in my talk, the reality of the next 15 minutes is I'm actually going to talk to you about how I came up with the Fortitude Formula. And in parts it's dark, gritty and painful. Fortitude is a hardship-based method. It's a hardship-based model. And it follows my mantra of the only way out is through. But for any of this to make any sense whatsoever, and for me to actually get a little bit of permission to be even stood on this stage, I'd like to rewind 40 years. As a very young child, I experienced significant emotional trauma. In fact, I suffered a number of different trauma streams right up until my early teenage years. And I learned some coping strategies like we all do. My most powerful coping strategy was don't worry, be happy. I learned as a 2-year-old that if I put a smile on my face and did all the right things externally, that everything was going to be okay and I could create a more stable environment for myself. And you know what? It worked. And it worked for 30 years. And I kept doing it. I followed the don't worry, be happy mantra. I built a life. I built a career. I started my own business. I got married. I had a social network. Don't worry, be happy was absolutely awesome. Until it wasn't. The truth of the matter is, the darkness and the pain that I had experienced as a young child was growing and growing and growing unbeknownst to me. And my strength and resilience that I was building was actually as thin and as brittle as you can possibly imagine, as I was to find out when the next trauma hit. And for that to make sense, I'll just rewind back 10 years. March 21st, 2010, I gave birth to my beautiful daughter, Darcy. She's absolutely the light of my life. She's incredible. And the only trouble she's ever really given me was when I was trying to get her out of my body. And she was massive. She was 9 pounds 9. Nobody realised she was going to be such a huge baby, and she got stuck. So after many years, it felt like it at the time. In fact, it still feels like it now. After many hours of trying, I was sent in for an emergency C-section, cesarean section, which we both survived, whatever that even means. But actually, it was so hard and so traumatic that I actually remember the moment where I felt my spirit break. I felt a part of me die in that moment. And when I was in the hospital and all that stuff was happening around me, don't worry, be happy was not an option. There was no positive for me to focus on to get me through. So after a few days in hospital, they discharged me, and Darcy and I were sent out into life to be. And the following 18 months are perhaps some of the darkest of my life as I tried to navigate through life with a broken survival system. I was completely lost. Everything that I had been operating from up until this point was failing me. It was very dark, very hard. I don't know whether anybody else in this room has a similar experience of what it's like just after you've given birth, but it's tough. And it was particularly tough for me in that my strategies had failed. So I bumbled around in this space for a period of time. And then my sister-in-law, who actually comes up twice in my talk today, bless her, I'll tell her about that afterwards. She doesn't know. We were sat having lunch, and I can really clearly remember the moment I was stuffing a jammy dodger in my mouth. And she was really fit at the time, going to a personal trainer, doing lots and lots and lots of exercise and so on. And she said to me, Colleen, do you fancy coming to this running group thing? And there I was with a jammy dodger in my mouth going, yeah, I'll come along. I've got no desire whatsoever to sort of get fit or change my body in any way though. The truth was, in the back of my mind I was like, oh yes, I can get out of the house. You know, it felt like for me that it was some me time and I could get out of the house. So off I bumbled to this running group, and I was really unfit at the time. And what happened is that the draw to get out of the house and have some me time and some brain space was so strong that I kept going. And then what do you know, I got fit. I accidentally got fit. It's possible. It's actually possible. And I realised at the time, I had this sort of epiphany moment, if you like. I realised that the stronger I got physically, the stronger I got mentally, and the stronger I became emotionally, I was like, oh, how come nobody else knows about this? And so I immediately started turning it into a training program and a product. And I really thought I had the formula that I could take out into the world to heal the world's trauma. Why isn't everybody doing this? I must get out there and change the world with my product. And so I tried. I did everything that I could possibly think of. I took the product to global corporates, to charity, to children's charities. I applied for funding. I went to schools, you name it. I tried it. I went there and I tried it, and I kept going and kept going and kept going. But as it turns out, my original Fortitude Formula was just a more sophisticated version of Don't Worry, Be Happy. Or as I now call it, the positivity problem. Because I was focusing on the positives, hoping that the pain and the trauma would pass. And it worked really well until it doesn't. And that's one of the problems that we face in life, is that we've got this idea that if we focus on the positives, on repeat, the pain will sort of diminish, the trauma will lessen. But the reality of this is it's actually just another form of avoidance. Avoiding the pain and the trauma and the hardship through perhaps fear or denial. And in worst case scenarios, what can happen is that the pain and the trauma becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until it takes over. Anybody ever experienced that before, where it just becomes too hard? This is what happened to me. I was actually drawing on all of my reserves at this point to keep going. And I had this formula, so I was like, this is the Holy Grail. This is the Holy Grail, it must work. So if I just keep going and I stay physically strong, mentally strong, and emotionally strong, everything's going to be all right. I can't fail. I'm about to change the world with this product. I need to keep going. I pushed myself harder and harder to keep going. To get Fortitude off the ground, to keep my business going, to be the best wife and best mother I could be. Does anybody else echo this and resonate this thing of trying to constantly try and be the best that you can? Unbeknownst to me, my emotional trauma that I experienced as a young child was just growing and growing and growing and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And what happened is it took over. And all of a sudden, after following my own Fortitude Formula for a period of time, too long, obviously, my wheels came to a grinding halt. I broke. I hit rock bottom. And it was dark and messy and painful. I was completely lost. Everything I'd operated from had failed me. Even my world-changing Fortitude Formula had failed. It had failed me as a person, and it failed as a product. I hadn't managed to get it to go into the market. I was completely lost. And you know what I really struggled with? Is that all the way through my life I'd been able to pick myself up. I'd always been able to get up. This time I couldn't get up. I was stuck. I couldn't get up. As you can imagine, this was horrific for the people around me, seeing me stuck and down and so low. And it got to the point where eventually they started saying to me, Colleen, something has to change. And I knew in the back of my mind it's because I hadn't dealt with the hardship and the pain, but I was so unprepared to go in there. No way. I was literally as resistant as you could possibly be. I'm not doing it. Literally no way, I'm not going there. I'll do anything but that. I hated the notion of going into it, and I hated everybody for even suggesting that it was a good idea. Literally, I was a very angry version of me. Yeah, you don't want to see that. So then eventually I decided that it was time for me to face into my pain and my darkness. But believe you me, I went in kicking and screaming. I was so, my brain was literally saying, no, don't do it. beautiful thing is that it was in this moment when I went in, that I realised the most important resilience lesson that there is. And it is that the only way out is through. The only way out to the real field of fortitude and resilience and strength is to deal with the stuff that's stopping you getting there. As hard and as horrible as it might be, it's dealing with the pain and the hardship that will enable you to come through. But here's the rub with that, right? The definition that we have of resilience in the world right now is courage in pain or adversity, right? Does everybody recognise that as a definition of resilience? I actually think it sets us up to fail, because courage on its own isn't enough. Oftentimes people use all of their reserves and they go, yeah, I'm going to be really brave, but then they just don't know how to do it. Actually, we need to know how. We need to know how to go in and deal with the pain and the hardship. And that was my greatest lesson. So I mentioned earlier I was going to share a methodology with you. And the first Fortitude Formula was emotional strength, physical strength, and mental strength. Yay! It didn't work. And it was through this process that I redesigned the whole program. And unfortunately, we don't have 2 days together to go through each and every one of the strategies. I would love to, of course, but that's for a different day. So I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour on what they are so that you can actually take something tangible away today. So the three strategies the three elements rather of the Fortitude Formula are strength strategies, Fortitude Gateways, and forged foundations. Slightly different, right? Very different, in fact. Very, very quickly, strength strategies are the things that everybody needs to learn to handle day-to-day tough stuff that comes up. Because let's face it, life can be tough on a day-to-day basis, right? It's not always easy. Strength strategies, things like, who am I? What do I stand for? What's important to me? Building blocks. What are those building blocks that I need to have in my life that help me to stand firm? My roots. How do I get grounded? How do I ground myself in my reality? But then also, how do I learn to adjust and flow? There's a few more. Again, we don't have the time to go through all of them, but there are a number of different strategies that help you to build everyday, day-to-day strength. The second section, the second element, are the Fortitude Gateways, and I absolutely love this part because this is the bit that I learned most keenly from going through my hardship. There are a number of different gateways, and these are those steps that we all need to take when we're down in the dark and the hardship to be able to get through. The first one is the Clarity Gateway. Actually, do you know, really understanding what the hardship is. Oftentimes we're so thrown off, our perspective is so way off that we don't really actually understand what the hardship even is. Moving through the Clarity Gateway helps us to get really clear on what the hardship is. We've got the Release Gateway, for instance. This is where we learn how to let stuff go, because we're so fond of holding on to stuff that isn't serving us well. The Release Gateway helps us to step through and let stuff go. And then we've got the Growth Gateway, actually giving ourselves permission to grow on the back of adversity and trauma. And the really key part there is giving ourselves permission, because oftentimes, guess what? We don't give ourselves permission and we choose to stay small because it's easier. The Growth Gateway is everything you need to learn to be able to grow and give yourself permission to flourish. The third element of the Fortitude Formula are forged foundations. Now these are the non-negotiable, absolute musts that we need to put into our lives following going through the gateways. Non-negotiables about how I must live my life now and put in place everything that I've learned into really strong, firm foundations, forged foundations. And I call them forged foundations because it's, you know, it's like really hard and you've pushed through and you've pushed through, so you've made furrows in the earth almost. Forged foundations, so things like boundaries, for instance, is one of the foundations. What are my personal boundaries? What's okay and what isn't? What will I accept, what won't I accept in my life going forward? We've got knowledge as a forged foundation, actually taking everything that happened when we were going through the gateways and turning it into your knowledge for life, We're not talking about everybody else's version, we're talking about your version. There are a number of different forged foundations as well. That's just to give you a flavour. In closing, there's so much more I'd really love to have shared with you today, but you know, it's a TEDx talk and my time is bleeping at me. I know that I'm in no way unique. There have been some amazing women stood on this stage today sharing some incredible stories. My pain and my hardship is no worse than anybody else's. What I am stood here saying is that there is a solution and there is a way through. There is no need for us to be bogged down by pain and hardship. And actually, the secret magic formula to resilience is having the courage to go in, getting the support you need while you're in there and working your way through. So this is my shout out to each and every one of you. Real resilience, real fortitude as I call it, actually comes from going through the hardship and the pain and knowing what to do when you're in there. So have the courage to go in there and deal with it and use the Fortitude Formula to help you work your way through. Ladies and gents, I'm Colleen and I wanted to say two massive thank yous to close. One is to each and every one of you for bringing your hearts here today, because you have made the days of everybody that has been on this stage. We are all so incredibly grateful. And I also want to say a huge, huge thank you to those people who came with me when I was going through my gateways. It's pretty lonely when you're in that space, and I had some incredible people that came with me in those moments, so I wanted to say thank you so much for that. Ladies and gents, I've been Colleen, and that is the Fortitude Formula. Thank you very much.